So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, I want to break this video down into two parts. Um, David Benavidez had some comments about Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. He basically said that he thinks that Caleb Plant hasn't got the power to keep Canelo off, and Canelo's going to walk through him and knock him out. I think that's the general consensus of a lot of people. I think that's the general consensus of many boxing fans around the world, that Canelo Alvarez is going to do to Caleb Plant what he did to Billy Joe Saunders. I do think that it's not going to be as easy as Billy Joe. I think Caleb Plant's a lot bigger. Caleb Plant's taller. I know there's a lot of people that think that Caleb Plant's just going to get wiped out, which there's a strong possibility he may well do. I do feel Canelo will stop Caleb Plant. I think he'll wear him down, hurt him to the body. I think he'll just wear him down. I don't think at this weight Canelo can wipe guys out with one punch, especially big 168s like Caleb Plant. I agree with David Benavidez, where I don't really think Caleb Plant has the power to really keep Canelo off. He hasn't got the, you need to be able to hurt Canelo. Because Canelo, the problem is with Canelo now, see, the Canelo that fought Lara back in the day, that Canelo could be outboxed, and that Canelo didn't have the boxing intelligence that he does today. That Canelo could easily be outboxed. He would get impatient. He would get more wild. He would, he'd telegraph his punches so you can get out of the way. Someone like Lara, I do think that if Canelo was to fight Lara now, I think he would destroy Lara. I think he'd walk him down. I think he's more patient. And one thing I've noticed with Canelo, that I think the improvement, the biggest, we don't panic anymore. He doesn't mind if guys are winning. He stays patient. He ups the ante when he knows that, okay, now we need to up the ante. He's got such a good boxing brain, and that's what makes Canelo great. He may not be the fastest guy, he may not even be the most powerful guy, but he's just so intelligent, and he is fast and he is powerful. He may not be the fastest and he may not be the most powerful, but he is very good at both attributes and very good with cutting off the ring. He may not even be the best at cutting off the ring, but he's very good at that attribute. So Canelo's just so good at everything now. He's so complete that I just don't think a guy like Caleb Plant, who hasn't got the power, I just don't think you can beat him, because I think eventually he's going to get to you. He's too good a boxer not to be landing consistent punches. I just think he's going to be landing too many punches. And like I said, I think, although he hasn't got the power, for me, he can knock guys out with one punch, but I don't think at this kind of weight he's going to be. But I just think he'll wear you down, especially if he doesn't respect your power. And I don't think Caleb Plant's going to be able to trouble his chin. And that's a big problem. I think the only guy that's going to beat Canelo Alvarez is a guy that's going to be able to push Canelo back, make Canelo work 3 minutes of a round. I'm still not convinced about his stamina. I know a lot of people seem to think that Canelo now has got great stamina and he sorted that issue. Maybe so, but I think that's a stylistic thing. I think if you put someone like Golovkin in there that's hard as nails, that's tough, that's able to push Canelo back and make him work 3 minutes of a round, I don't think it'd be as easy for Canelo to, I think his stamina will be an issue, and I think you will see Canelo tired. I just think the guys that he's been fighting aren't able to exert or put Canelo under any kind of pressure. So Canelo just takes what they got and he just walks through them. And I think he'll do the same to Caleb Plant. But I think where we need to see if his stamina has been corrected is against someone like Beterbiev. I think that's going to be when we find out, okay, is Canelo able to keep... So when Beterbiev is putting pressure on him, is Beterbiev getting to him? Can you see Canelo breathing heavy? I think that's when we'll really realize if he sorted out the stamina issue, because Beterbiev can make Canelo work 3 minutes of the... He'll definitely make Canelo work 3 minutes of the round. And I think that's when we get to see whether Canelo has sorted out those issues that we've seen in the Golovkin fight. Now, in the second Golovkin fight, it was better, but I still think Golovkin was able to put Canelo under a lot of pressure in that fight. Beterbiev's even stronger. He's even bigger than Golovkin, so that's going to be even more interesting. Kovalev was big, and I know, but Kovalev wasn't the same Kovalev that it was 4 or 5 years ago. Kovalev was doing well in the fight. In the end, Canelo became the pressure fight, and he was walking Kovalev down in that fight. It's going to be interesting, very, very interesting, to see if he does go up to light heavy and fights Beterbiev, because I think that's going to tell us a lot. Benavidez, I think what Benavidez said about Plant is spot on, but I feel the same way for Benavidez if he fights Canelo. I know a lot of people seem to think that Benavidez has got power. He's fast and he puts his punches together, but I don't think he's got the power. I don't think he's a real big puncher at all. Didn't his last fight go the distance with Ronald Ellis? I think he's fast, don't get me wrong, and he puts his combinations and punches together, but I don't think he's a big powerful guy. I think he's quite lanky, and I don't think he has that physical presence either. I don't think he's physically the strongest, to be honest. I think Beterbiev is he's not as tall as Benavidez, but he's not just power puncher. He's also physically very strong. See, Golovkin wasn't just a power puncher. He's also very physical. He can push you back. He's quite a strong guy. He may not be the biggest guy, may not even be the biggest middleweight, but he's a very strong, like Hagler. He wasn't biggest middleweight in terms of height and stuff, but he was a very strong guy. Physically strong. Do you understand where I'm coming from? It's not necessarily about like Canelo. He's very physically strong. May not be the biggest guy, but he's physically very strong. He's built like a house. He's just so strong. And that's the same with Golovkin. That's the same with Beterbiev. They're very strongly built. It's not necessarily, they may not have to be the tallest. Like Callum Smith, for example. Callum Smith's tall, but I don't look at him as a very physically strong guy. I look at Beterbiev as a very physically strong guy. Tall doesn't mean just because you're big and tall and stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean you're physically strong. There's certain guys like Golovkin, like Canelo, like Beterbiev. These are physically strong guys. You know, even someone like Gervonta Davis, he may not be the biggest guy, but he's a physically strong guy. He's like a bully. Do you understand where I'm coming from? You don't have to be the biggest guy to be physically very strong. You know, and I think Canelo is that. I think Canelo's physically very strong. And even though Plant might have all the physical advantage, might have the reach, might have the height, might have all of that, but Plant's not the physically strong guy in there. Canelo is. Canelo is the physically stronger man. He's the guy that's going to be able to push Plant back. And I think Plant's relying on boxing, moving, using his feet, using his skills, using his hand speed. That's what Plant's relying on. I just don't think that style I think back in the day, 4 or 5 years ago, may have given Canelo issues. But now I think Canelo's fought so many guys like that. I just don't think I think Canelo has worked out a game plan on how to break guys like that down. And the problem is with Plant and Billy Joe, these are good fighters and good slick fighters. I don't think they're complete fighters though. I think they're guys that you can get to. And they're also guys that haven't got the experience of fighting at the level of Canelo Alvarez. And that's another big problem. See, when you've been fighting guys that are not at the level of Canelo, and they haven't even fought a lot of world-class guys. And I said this about Billy Joe before the fight, that Billy Joe hasn't even fought a lot of world-class fighters prior to fighting Canelo. Now, Plant's even worse, because Plant hasn't even got the resume Billy Joe had. Billy Joe had a better resume, and Billy Joe's resume was nothing to shout about. But Caleb Plant's not got Billy Joe's resume. He's fought Jose Utsakatsi. That's it, really. Apart from that, Plant's had quite an easy ride, really. So now he's going to jump up after fighting like Mike Lee and the guys that he's been fighting. Mike Lee and the other, who did the guy he fought? Caleb Truax, to fighting Canelo Alvarez. The gap in levels is just too wide. I just don't think you can go from that to fighting Canelo Alvarez. I just don't. And I don't think you're going to be successful. And if somebody looks special, like somebody's really, really special, and you can see, wow, this guy's special, right? Then possibly. But I didn't look at Billy Joe like that, and I don't look at Caleb Plant like that. And I just don't think they're going to be able to bridge the gap in levels to be able to beat someone like Canelo. And that's experience is a big thing in boxing. Experience is a massive thing in boxing. And if you're not got a great resume, or you've not been matched correctly before you fight someone like Canelo, it could be quite a one-sided affair against someone that skilled, because Canelo Alvarez is so skilled, he could outclass you, outbox you, make you look bad. And that's the issue. That's the issue. You need to have a good resume prior to fighting Canelo Alvarez. You need to have fought a lot of world-class guys. You're never going to fight as many guys as good as Canelo because there aren't any. That's why he's the best in the world. But you've got to fight a lot of world-class guys. So if Plant had fought guys like Callum Smith, he had fought guys like Billy Joe, he had fought guys like Benavidez, then he would have been in a great position to fight someone like Canelo, because although those guys aren't as good as Canelo, he would have fought the best he can and had the best preparation for someone like Canelo. And he would have also had confidence going into that fight that I've beaten some of the best in the division. Whereas Caleb Plant hasn't beaten some of the best in the division. And that's the problem. And that's the problem Billy Joe had. He himself hadn't fought any of the top guys. And that was a big, big problem when he fought Canelo Alvarez, because the jump in levels is massive. So that's my take on that. I do agree with David Benavidez that Canelo Alvarez will stop Caleb Plant due to, just being too powerful, really. I agree with what he had to say. Now, let's move on to the second part of this video. I want to talk about Conor Benn. I want to talk about how Conor Benn is fighting Adrian Granados. I think Benn will stop Adrian Granados. I think Granados might hopefully make it a tougher fight than, What's his name? Samuel Vargas did. Well, we hope so, because that didn't last very long at all. I'm interested to see how Conor Benn gets on. I'm interested to see how they build Conor Benn, and I'm interested to see what's his next move. I see that Conor Benn, Amir Khan is training and he's getting into shape and he's looking good. I don't know whether they're angling at that fight. I'm going to be interested to see if Conor Benn is successful against Granados, who he calls out, what's going on behind the scenes, and who Conor Benn plans to fight. Personally, I think Conor Benn should fight David Avanesian. And if he can beat someone like David Avanesian, then he's banging on for a world title shot. Personally, that's what I think he should do. I think that's what he should do. And if he beats David Avanesian, then you may even look at someone like Kavialauskas, or you may even look at someone like Josecito Lopez. That's a good fight. If he was to beat... See, the next fight after Granados is going to be the tough one. Who's he going to fight after Granados? Because for me, after Granados, if he can come through Granados, because there's no gimme, but I do expect him to beat Granados, that's going to be tough, because I feel like no matter who you put him in with, he could get beat. I feel like, and that's the problem. He needs to be matched well. He needs to be matched right. Because if you match him too quickly, you don't want to lose an asset. You don't want to lose a guy that potentially has the capability of being a star. And this is going to be an issue with Conor Benn, because Conor Benn hasn't got the amateur experience. Conor Benn hasn't been... I don't think he's gone through the proper route. He hasn't fought for the British title. He hasn't even proved that he's the best in Britain, really. If we're honest, he hasn't fought the young guys like Mickinson, and he's already said that he's not interested in those fights. But if Conor Benn has a lot of confidence in his ability, surely he would think that, I could beat guys like Mickinson and then move on. But that aside, he may be, he destroyed Samuel Vargas. Maybe he's above British level. Okay, fair enough. But then who are you going to match him against next? And that's the problem. That's the problem, because if the Khan fight doesn't happen, and that's all down to Amir Khan, really, not down to Conor Benn. Amir Khan might not be interested in Conor Benn. He might be looking at guys like Broner and stuff like that. So if that fight doesn't happen, then who are you going to match Conor Benn in there with? And the next fight after Granados, it has to be someone credible. It has to be like a Josecito Lopez, or it has to be someone like Avanesian, someone like Kavialauskas, someone like Virgil Ortiz, Jaron. It has to be someone on those kind of levels. And those are the type of fights where now you're starting to say, okay, he may lose those fights. And this is why, for me, they're angling down the Khan route. First, they may look at Khan, he's inactive. And, he's not the fighter he was. And it's a big payday. It's a big name. So they're probably confident they beat Khan. And it makes Conor Benn a massive star if he wins. But even if he was to lose to Khan, it's not the end of the world. I don't think that's the way they're looking at it. Even though I think it would be a damaging blow, I think they look at it, it's not the end of the world. So I think that's why they're angling down that road. But Conor Benn, has got the potential of being a huge pay-per-view star because, firstly, obviously because his dad was a huge name in British boxing. Secondly, Conor Benn's quite exciting the way he is, his character. You know, a lot of people don't. A lot of people have been seen of late. A lot of people are starting to hate on Conor Benn and not and start to say, well, he's quite annoying. I actually like Conor Benn. I actually think his personality is good. I like the way he talks. Now, some of the stuff about Khan and calling him a coward and stuff like that, that doesn't sit well because, I feel like, fair enough, you're calling somebody out. And I feel like he keeps talking about, how Khan fought Barrera and stuff like that. The difference is Khan wasn't calling out Barrera. That fight got made naturally because Barrera had ambitions at world level still, right? You're calling out Amir Khan. There's a difference. Khan wasn't calling out Barrera. He wasn't like going into every interview and talking about Barrera. There's a difference here. There's a big difference. So I don't think bringing that fight up is irrelevant, And also he brought up Jorge Linares and Devin Haney. Jorge Linares was fighting Devin Haney for a world title. Conor Benn doesn't hold any world title. So to compare that fight to that is irrelevant because I know he talks about Billy Dib, but Amir Khan got paid millions to fight Billy Dib, and his original opponent wasn't supposed to be Billy Dib. That was a makeshift opponent for the guy that he was supposed to fight. And by the way, the guy that he was supposed to fight wasn't any great, but the fact of the matter is the money that he was getting paid. It was a money fight, So it's either the fight with Conor Benn's going to pay him huge amounts of money, or it's for a title, because that's basically what's going to motivate Khan to fight him. Otherwise, what does Amir Khan get to fight Conor Benn? But fact of the matter is, Conor Benn needs to be calling out guys like David Avanesian. Now, David Avanesian might not do as much for his profile as a fight with Khan would do, but David Avanesian is a more credible welterweight right now than Amir Khan is. So he's going to get a lot more respect for beating Avanesian. If he beats Amir Khan, people are going to say, well, it wasn't a prime Khan anyway. He's just beat an older Khan. So personally, I think Conor Benn needs to look at fighting someone like Devin Avanesian. If he wants the from a credibility standpoint, he'll get a lot more credibility. But it's just whether Eddie Hearn and that want to put him in the deep end with someone like Avanesian. Because if he loses, it's back to the drawing board. But, leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think. Is Conor Benn the next pay-per-view star? Leave your thoughts. And, guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.